where me and Hallie and Quinn, we talk about anything related to the healing journey, the self of Exodus, right? It is an expedition. It's a adventure. It's
an adventure.
It's an adventure. You learn so much, and life will continuously give you these adventures because it's continuing on always. You know, like when I think about things that we have gone through as a child to now, I mean, that's a whole adventure to discover and dive deep, and which is why it's such a healing journey. And we believe that by doing this work, we can actually have the type of intimate connections that we crave for, that is fulfilling, that is long lasting, there's quality in it, and also bringing about peace in our lives too, because we start making these decisions that heal us so much that we start to feel at peace with ourselves versus regretful about our lives and angry and bothered and stuff. So we appreciate everyone that joins with us on this journey. And if you're curious about what we offer also, you can go to selfexodus.com. We do meditations every single week, and we do monthly workshops with a different theme. This theme for this month is Root Your Values. So with that said, our topic today is own your story. Own your story. And so what comes up for you, Hallie, with with owning your story and why it's so beneficial to own your story? Yeah.
Well, I want to comment on what you just said in the intro, and I think it all connects because you talked about how by being on one's self-love exodus, so being on your journey of self-love, meaning that you're in process, you're learning, you're choosing, you're trying, right? Mm-hmm. You're like trying to do something new. You're trying to do something that you didn't learn growing up. You're choosing things, you're choosing mindset shifts, you're choosing relationships, you're choosing habits that support you. And then you named kind of like the two primary reasons why we do this work. One is for healthy, satisfying, fulfilling connection and relationships in our life, because when we're on our deathbed, what's going to matter? How much money we made or who we loved and how much we loved, right? So like loving others is such a big part of loving ourselves. We know this. And then the other thing that you mentioned is having peace.
Yes.
Like having peace in your own one-selfness, having peace in your alone time, having peace when it's literally just you with yourself, facing yourself. Yeah. Because if you don't have that, then like you're very, very, very susceptible to unhealthy, codependent relationships that aren't sustainable and aren't going to serve your life.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was just a really good breakdown for like what we're here and what we're with and what we're here, like how we're here to serve life and love.
Yeah, it's the most important work in our beliefs. You know, it's I cannot imagine doing life without my self-love journey and the practices that I have set in my lifestyle to help me process and heal and release. So
it's everything.
We're here for it. We're here for it.
And then as all of that relates to owning your story, so the big thing to me about owning your story as it relates to loving others and having peace within yourself is that, you know, we've all been through so much.
Yes.
And even some of us like feel like we haven't, or we feel like our life has been boring. You know, some of us, like I definitely go through these phases where I'm like, I feel so boring. I feel like my life is boring. I feel like nothing is happening. I feel like a no one. And then I'll be engaging with someone who's curious and interested, like Quinn, for example. And then I have all of this to share about my story.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'm like, whoa. Like, we're all made up of so much interesting material, so much hard material, so much traumatizing material, so much sad material, so much glorious material. There's so much there. And so being able to own your story, especially the pieces that have brought up shame for you, you know, the more that you just like kind of allow those parts of your story to take ownership of them. And oftentimes we take ownership of our story by sharing our story. I'm reading this novel right now, and it reads like a memoir. I don't know, it might be a memoir. It's called a novel, but anyways, this person is sharing his story in such the most honest, beautiful account. And it's like so raw and so honest. And it's making me feel like, wow, thank you for showing me how to be this honest about like one's life experiences and the feelings in that life experience. Because when we do that, we give ourselves more peace. And then we also give ourselves more space to hold for other people's stories.
Yes.
And then there's more love.
That is what you said right there is the category of what I see is so missing in today's society. The lack of human connection, like real, honest, intimate connections, right? Like, where's the room for that when we're numbing, or getting distracted? Like, I can think of some people in my mind right now where I can just see them chasing material things to cover up what they didn't get when they were young.
Yeah.
The love, support. Okay, well, let me just be smart enough. Let me go be rich enough. Let me go have this status because that is how maybe my parents saw as success. So if they see that, then perhaps then they will love me. So there's so much of rewiring what we have believed since we were young.
The programming.
The freaking programming. And then, oh yeah, connection. Oh yeah, that thing. And then one doesn't even know how to intimately connect with someone, right? We're so out of touch with actually who we really are. We're busy wearing on masks that got approved from other people. So we're like, oh, this is working. But then guess what? That's not deep enough. So people easily leave as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is a really good point, because it's kind of like the more real you are with someone and the more real they are with you, that's what creates a bond. And if you have a true bond, there's just more security in the relationship. And with that security, it's like trust builds. And when trust builds, then, you do more life together. So yeah, yesterday my friend and I were hanging out, and we went and we shot hoops, and then we hung out at the river, and we were just having this reflection of kind of like the two things that we know that we need more than anything else to feel mentally, emotionally, spiritually happy and well. And it was movement of our physical bodies and connection. And we were both like, it's so easy to be like, nah, not today.
Totally.
On both of those things. To just like not make space for either of those things, But it's like crazy how fast we will downward spiral when we are lacking just those fundamentals. And connection is such a fundamental. But yeah, we have to own our stories in order to truly connect with each other, because we have to show the realness of who we are.
Yes. I had a client, we just kind of like, I share what's coming up for me for them, right? Because I'm like, let's just throw it on the table and see how you feel about that. And this person ended up wanting to kind of like make a bio about themselves, but then they were having a hard time refining it. So I was like, let's just do a brain dump. Let's just share who the F you are. And it ended up being such a healing experience for them, because they're acknowledging what they've been through and they can actually see it in writing.
Yeah.
And then that brings up, oh, you see where there's shame here. Ooh, you see where there's anger there. So that's the process of owning your story, sharing your story, seeing what comes up, because it's going to get emotional. You're going to be like, oh yeah, and then this happened. And again, like, sharing your story is releasing. Sharing your story in safe places and in safe ways with yourself And if you could share with other people, that's even great as well, because they can probably assist you in going where you need to go, asking the right questions and things like that. Like kind of like what you were sharing with me earlier, like what would be helpful for you when people ask about your loss and, you know, how you grew up and stuff like that. It's healing. We need to connect with ourselves and acknowledge the fact that we have a story. You have a life. Like, you've experienced things from birth to now. We've experienced so much not to express the story. And especially if you're listening right now and you're craving that human connection, and it's almost like you, but then at the same time you're bitter because you're like, people don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if people don't care, then, you know, I would like to ask, like, does that mean that you still, like, what about you? Like, even though if people don't care, okay, yeah, there's that. And also you get to explore what it means to care for yourself, right? Because then are we going to let other people who don't care model that back to us? Oh, then I shouldn't care about myself.
Well, and that's probably a projection, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
People don't care is a way of saying I don't care enough about my own piece or my own story.
Right? Like, as we project, you know, if we replace that about you, would that stick true? Because most likely it's a projection, right? When there's bitterness and stuff like that. And so, yeah, owning your story, it's a beautiful process when you're willing.
Yeah. Well, and I just want to share the way it's kind of like, okay, how do we own our whole story from birth to now, right? There's so much there. The universe will bring you the parts of your story that are wanting to be owned by you at any given time. And so something that happened for me this week is that my sister had pulled out all of our family photo albums out of her attic and was going through them. And she texted me this picture of me and my dad. And my dad was holding me and kissing me and hugging me. And I was probably like 3. And he died when I was 4. So he died 1 year later. And I have no memory of having a father. But then I see this picture of like being loved by my father. And so then I had to re-grieve the loss of my father, which is something that because he died when I was so young, it's kind of like I only grieve it in these little like chunks that happen periodically, because it's really kind of too immense of a full grief to even really do. When my mom died when I was 22, I just grieved that straight for 5 years. I grieved. I just was in grief for years. Still doing my life, but like grieving in a lot of my free space. But because this death happened before I could understand death really and loss, I've been grieving it in these little chunks in my adulthood. And so I had another chunk. To do.
You did.
And I had to like own this part of my story again, that like I didn't have my dad and I did for a little bit of time. So anyways, that's just like an example of owning your story, but not having to figure out what needs to be owned, but just responding to the parts of your story that get reignited.
Totally, right? And like, how do you feel about it now? Like you let that all come up and you continue to like shoot hoops and get active and connect with others. Like, how did that help you?
Well, one thing that I was really reflecting on is just like how much I have put myself in a position in my adult life to be loved in a kind of like platonic way by men who are fathers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm like, wow, I figured out how to get some daddy love in this life, like without consciously being fully aware of it.
That's
like it's just been really a part of my, I just like have dad who are more my age, but who love me in a really safe way, who have children. So that's been interesting.
Yeah. Right. Like makes so much sense that you could pick that up, whether unconsciously you can pick that up and it makes sense that you're drawn to them.
Yeah. And which makes me feel like, okay, like I'm getting my needs met. Like There's not like, even though it feels like such a hole because I don't have my dad.
Yeah.
My dad didn't get to love me in my childhood and in my adulthood. I have still found ways to be loved safely by the masculine and tenderly.
Beautiful.
You know?
Beautiful. And your story continues, right? Like,
Story continues.
you were able to create something out of that story of not having a father. And before you shared me, there was even shame as like a child, like sharing that. And so, and that's so healing.
Totally.
Seeing that just now, like right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you can still get your needs met from like what you needed probably from your father at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So it continues. It doesn't end there.
And who knows? Like there might be a point where I'm like, okay, I got like daddied enough by the homies, you know, like because we get stunted where we have trauma. So like there was like a need that got stunted, an emotional stunting that happened at age 4 for me. Mm-hmm. And so in order to get caught up, there's like I had to like fill in, and I still am in that filling in process where I am allowing myself to be loved, taken care of, supported by safe men. And, you know,
like platonic too, right?
Platonic.
Like just healthy masculine energy in your life.
Not having to make out and have sex and do sleepovers, but just like literally someone that's going to be able to like help me move stuff and run errands with me and like take me to the river when I'm having a hard day. Like, you know?
Yeah, you've still been getting that.
So
I'm like, okay,
yeah.
I love that so much. Because I remember I was like, oh, if you need help moving, let me know. And you're like, I actually got it down. the men got it, you know? And like, you're allowing your needs to be met in that type of masculine way. So,
yeah. And there's something about owning my story that is part of that, right? Like owning that I didn't get that need met and I deserve to have that need met. I'm worthy of being loved in that way. So it's happen. Like, okay, cool. I'm going to receive that love.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Man. Okay.
What's up with you for owning your story right now?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, we don't share our story because we're ashamed. Point blank. So, to own the story, we need to address why it's so shameful. And I mean, shoot, all of us have our own journeys when we start waking up and the willing part, right? Because you're like, oh, okay, I'm at a dead end. Like, I'm willing to do anything to continue my journey instead of just reaching to this dead end and call it quits. Like, this sucks. And this is just how my life is going to be. I'm just going to be at this dead end. So owning my story has been so beneficial because from sharing my story and expressing myself in healthy ways, I've been healing. And because I've been healing, when I do have the opportunity to clear my story with someone, it can heal beyond me.
Yes.
So last night I had a huge, like a girls' night. It was basically my mom, my older sister, and my younger siblings all got together. And I'm so grateful for how it went out because it ended up being facilitated in a way where it was a safe place to heal and release. And so I saw that my younger sisters really needed to hear me own my story of that I wasn't at home. I didn't care. I acknowledged that. Like I owned that I didn't care at that time that I wasn't around with the family because that's what I showed. And so I own that. So I apologize for that. And I don't have any ego in that. I'm not making excuses for myself in that. And when you heal, you're able to participate in these clearing conversations, these clearing opportunities to extend the healing further out. Because so oftentimes we experience hurt with others, but then we never get to clear with them. And that's fine, right? So we get to clear with ourselves and move on with our lives. And then there's that opportunity where it comes where you're given the opportunity to clear it with the person that you've hurt or vice versa, right? And I would love that to experience that with people that I've experienced pain with, right? And so it's beneficial in the way where you are now creating you're like bridging the gaps between relationships that you crave to reconnect again. And you're able to connect in a such more vulnerable, deeper, fulfilling place, because when you get to feel it all, you get to feel all of that too with the other person. And then boom, human connection.
Totally.
The type that has depth. And this is why people always say like it doesn't matter how long you've known someone, you can get to know someone within, gosh, a couple days. I mean, it depends on two people having that amount of depth to hold for each other. And wow, you are discovering who someone truly is within a couple of days. You know, so there's so much in that, and there's so many benefits of like owning your story, and you can see that that's a process. So that's why you see why there is the world where there's so much healing workshops going on. You know, I mean, there needs to be more. There needs to be more in so many communities. But you can see that there's a whole world where people have dedicated themselves to their own healing, and then also to hold space for healing, because it's that important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, owning your story allows you to heal, and also being able to provide healing experiences for other people as well.
It's so true.
Yeah.
And it's also, it's kind of like when people have more understanding, you know, like you always turn to this when we kind of talk about like, what is love? What's the definition of love? Oftentimes your answer is understanding. And so owning your story is gifting someone with more understanding into where you were at, what happened, what you recognize now, you know, that is love.
That is love.
That's giving love.
And with understanding, there's compassion, right? Where you're able to be non-judgmental when you're with other people, because you've owned your story, your shame, or your mistakes and whatnot, and you grew from it. When someone mentions their shame, right? Like you connect right away, and there's no room to judge that person.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something that I've been really grateful for. I know that you feel that too, where it's like of course I watch my own judgments. We're all human, but I'm just so grateful to be such in a place to be aware and just go to compassion, go to understanding. If I'm upset, there's something that I'm not understanding. How is this mirroring back to me what I need to continue to work on, you know? Like, I didn't get into that self-love yet. That's why I don't have space for this, and that's why I have judgment right now. So it's so beneficial, and you will be so grateful that you did it, because you're like, wow, this is what the world has to offer when I say yes to owning my story. What? It sounds so simple. It's a whole life. It's a whole life. And feeling empowered to continue to create your story, right? Owning your story to continue to create your story.
Exactly.
Not letting the world create the story for you.
Yes.
You get to create it.
You get to create your story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're gonna say something based on what you were just saying?
Yeah. Connection. Yeah, Susan. Hi, Susan. This one sounds good. I'm gonna have to watch it from the beginning. Yeah, I received that. Yes. And then we have someone that's been here before, Knowledge El Shabazz. Hello, from Lynchburg. Hello. Yeah. Owning story is so I can't say that word.
Contradictory
to whatever I've been taught. Right. Right.
Yeah, which is to like keep it in.
Yeah. Don't share.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's like I was telling Quinn back to like my story that when I was a child and in school, I was so ashamed that I had a dead parent, because no one else had a dead parent, and it felt so embarrassing to me that I would lie. And I would tell the other kids that my parents were divorced and my dad lived in Florida. And that's why he wasn't around.
Yeah.
And that was my story, that I had a fake story. And so that's where we get conditioned to hide our story, right? Because like, it's just brutal. It's brutal when we're children, because anything that's different is weird, and we get bullied and we get made fun of once the ego starts to develop and starts to like, do separation. It's so pure, up until a certain point. So, we really get conditioned to kind of like choke on our story.
Ooh.
And like
Yeah.
keep it inside and to not reveal the truth of who we are and what we've been through. And then no one can know us and no one can see us. And then we can't have intimacy. We can't have intimate connections with other people.
Yeah.
So it's like we just have to undo that and like just let it like unravel in the way that it needs to.
Yeah. Yeah. And with that said, right, I just think about like safe places only, safe people only, like do yourself a favor and share in a way where it gets released, where there's no judgments, no one interrupting you, no one, judging. Oh God, there's so much judgment.
Yeah.
That's why we don't share. Oh, so we're taught we're taught to choke on our story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Jamie says, what does it mean to own your story? Watch the replay. We went through a whole thing, but it's being able to express about you and owning and seeing what comes up when you share, because then you get to own it, right? Instead of being shameful about these mistakes or things that you've done in the past, you're taking ownership and you're owning it, which takes a process. So to me, when I hear that, it's like being able to share you, like from childhood to now, and allowing what needs to be unraveled to come up, because now you have an opportunity to heal it.
Totally.
Let it come forward to understand and to bring love to it,
But watch the replay because we get really into that.
Yeah.
What it means.
Yeah. Yeah, so good. Oh gosh, any last words, Hallie? When we go show up on here, we just let it go, like this is us like owning our story of like if something comes up, we let it come up.
Mm-hmm.
It's a safe space, so we let it come up, and we always reconnect before going on live. And so just know, we don't plan this. We plan to meet up, but we don't plan what we're going to talk about. We keep it fresh.
We keep it real fresh.
Yeah.
Well, this is a piece that I think is really interesting about how, you and I have this weekly commitment to each other where we show up, we kind of update each other on like, what's the realest thing that's up for us right now? Like what's the struggle? What's the emotions? What's the part of our story that we're revisiting, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then we create a topic for it and then we go live with that. So there is something to be said about having a rhythm, and the weekly rhythm is really nice, where you have, I think this is why people do therapy, where you have that place that you can go to share your story and talk about your story, and it's embedded in your week. Because if we didn't have this embedded in our week,
we're missing out.
We wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, and there's places that I'm so grateful for this, there's different people that I can connect with, like different ways, and then we get to share with you. So it's a whole experience. We share and then we share.
Yeah.
Share and share, like release, continuing the process. So we're doing it in front of you right now. Because we'll share our own personal experiences. So we're healing all the time as we choose to express and let it be known and talk about it.
Okay, thank you for saying that, because that's like the other thing about owning your story and sharing your story and having that be part of your lifestyle is it helps you heal all the time. It creates healing for you all the time. And so that's how you keep yourself healed and cleansed and cleared for the goodies.
Yeah, and Susan said right there, freeing. Exactly.
Yeah.
Once you get a dose of feeling free, it's like, how can I sustain this freedom? Right? We're like, choked up and bonded to like jail with our story. I'm not allowed to share. Yeah, so good stuff. We'll see everyone here again next week. We are here at 11 a.m. every single Saturday. We were a little bit late today because we had a lot to share. Okay, we had a lot to share. But yes, we are here every Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So we'll see you next week. And our workshop, this is what we support you in doing, basically what we just said. It's a different prompt every time, different theme. It's rooting your values, okay? Foundational building workshop, and that is on 420 website, selfloveexodus.com. That's where you go. And our meditations, get a dose of that in our meditations. We continue to hold the space where you can show up for you too and continue your healing experience.
I
But
think
yeah.
we have 3 tickets left.
Okay,
for our
we
workshop.
got 3 tickets left.
Yeah.
Okay,
So get yours.
get yours. We'll see you
Bye.
later. Bye.
To the X.
To the X. Cool.
You got your call at noon?
Yeah, you saw